Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye fans, to Punting is Winning, the All Iowa podcast. We're your hosts, Keith and JD, back here for, I guess, technically final day of the regular season with the Army-Navy game today.
Yeah.
Good game. I actually enjoyed watching that one.
Yeah, it was a fun game.
Yeah. I say let's kick it off with the question of the week last week, which was wrestling related. How many national titles has Iowa had in wrestling in the NCAA history? And nobody actually answered it correctly. We did have a couple guesses. Somebody guessed 23. The answer is 24.
24. Yep. That's correct.
So Iowa is definitely one of the blue bloods of the college wrestling world. That's for sure.
Penn State's right on their heels. I don't know what Penn State has. They've won quite a few of them lately.
Yeah, I think it would be Iowa, Penn State, Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
kind of the top three would be my guess.
Yeah, that's who I'm guessing.
So,
the usual suspects.
Yep. So, but as you noticed, we are recording a day early. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say we're recording usually on Sunday night. We're recording tonight on Saturday night, and the reason why is that you have a commitment tomorrow night. And it's a commitment that I'm extremely jealous of, and I wish I could get to go. Why don't you explain why we're not going to be recording on Sunday night instead of tonight? So, go ahead.
So my wife got tickets for me and her, kind of an early Christmas present, I guess. Chevy Chase is going to be in Ottumwa, Iowa tomorrow night, and he is doing a special screening of Christmas Vacation, which, as you know, is my favorite Christmas movie.
Yep.
And then they're going to do a Q&A, him and his wife, about back behind the scenes, filming of just kind of funny stuff that happened during the filming of the show, and just kind of a Q&A right afterwards. And it's going to be real interesting.
I would be fascinated by that. I have watched that movie more times than I can count, and it seems like I laugh at the same spots every time. And occasionally I pick up something that I didn't realize that even after seeing it, I'd say 75 to 100 times, I still see things that every once in a while, I'm like, how come I never noticed that before? And it would be great to be able to ask questions. And I know that one of the things that has been discussed on the internet, and I don't know how true it is, but when he's going through that rant at the end, when he talks about his boss and he got that check, or it wasn't a check,
the headache,
yeah. Rumor has it, and I don't know if it's true, but it's something maybe you should ask if he ad-libbed that whole thing, because I've heard that he did. So that'd be something that would be very interesting to me to find out if it was an ad-lib, and that's quite an ad-lib if he did that on his own.
Well, it's like Mike Myers did that one in Austin Powers, with the scene where he's with Carrie Fisher as the psychiatrist.
Okay.
And that whole thing was ad-lib too. So, those guys can come up with that stuff just on the fly, and that's fascinating. I couldn't do that. I mean,
I'm jealous of you. I really wish I could be a mouse in a corner somewhere and just listen to that whole thing, but I didn't even know about it until you told me about it a couple of weeks ago, and I would have probably been apt to look for tickets, but I'm sure it sold out very quickly. I didn't even look, but good times. I bet that is going to be a really fun time. I think you're going to enjoy it.
Well, I just hope the weather holds out and we don't have to drive through ice.
I think it's supposed to get much better than today. I know today we woke up with, I don't know, I woke up with about a quarter-inch ice on everything, and the dogs were tippy-toeing around, and I was hoping I wouldn't have to take them to the vet because of a torn-up knee ligament or pop a hip out of place or something because of a slip and fall. But luckily, so far, everything's fine. But
Yeah, so it should be a good time, and
Yeah.
not really
You'll have to
looking
let
forward
us
to
know how that comes out.
driving at 85 miles back home at 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday night. But hey,
Yeah, but I
totally
think I'd
worth it.
still do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Anyway.
this is an opportunity. You don't know how long Chevy Chase is going to be around, and this is an opportunity when he comes to Iowa this close to Christmas. You're not going to get this opportunity again, so you have to take it.
And it's just the fact that it's in Ottumwa. Just that's
It's
looked at
odd.
all the places that he's going to be, and I thought that was like the odd place out because he's going to be like St. Louis and Chicago and
right?
places like that, and I'm like, Ottumwa just doesn't make sense. It just seems like the odd place. But hey, I'm wondering if it had maybe something to do with like the Tom Arnold connection or something, maybe.
Something with the Ottumwa. It had to be something. Somebody there knows somebody, and they were able to pull some strings and get it done. So congratulations to Ottumwa for getting that.
Yep, absolutely. So what do you say think? We get into the men's basketball game last week? I tell you what, they were right there, and it was a heck of a lot better game than I was anticipating.
Me too. In fact, I predicted like 92-67. I just figured Iowa State was just going to roll and put this one in the rearview mirror pretty early. But, Iowa held with them and stayed with them for most of the game, clear up to like the last 3 or 4 minutes. I think Iowa just maybe 5 minutes, they went cold. Couldn't hit three-pointer.
They started running out of gas, too.
Yeah, you could tell that. You could absolutely tell that Iowa was, and I even wrote here on my notes that it was a little bit of a fatigue factor, I think, at the end. But I want to throw some stats out that I thought were interesting. Iowa and Iowa State shot exactly the same percentage from the floor. 44%. They both shot exactly the same 3-pointers, 11 for 28. So they're even. They're dead even at those two stats. The difference is that Iowa State had 45 rebounds. Iowa had 29.
And 18 of those were offensive rebounds.
And 18 were offensive. I think Iowa's 8. I think they're up rebounded.
6.
Iowa. 6. Bad. Okay, yeah. Both teams had 9 turnovers. So neither team had a real advantage there. Iowa shot 87% free throws, which is much better than they have been shooting. And Iowa State shot 73%, which is not bad. It's not great. It's not bad. Iowa was led by Owen Freeman with 16 points. What were your thoughts on the game? Just not stats related necessarily.
I think he made a smart move to start the game. Maybe he listened to us just last week or last few weeks. I've been a very big proponent to Ladji Dembele coming off the bench. I think that was it. It was going to be something that was going to help his mental fortitude when it comes to playing, because I think that takes a little bit of the pressure off of him. He doesn't have to feel like he has to do as much. And you could see that it was a completely different player coming off the bench than what he'd been as a starter. Right? As a starter, he'd been grossly ineffective the last 2-3 games. And
almost non-existent.
But he had 11 points in the first half.
Yep. Well, that's what he finished with.
2 or 3 3-pointers.
He was 4 of 4 from the field, 3 of 3 from 3-point line, and he finished with 11 points in 14 minutes. That's his stat line. You could just look. He just looked after he hit that first one.
More comfortable.
He looked more comfortable. His confidence kind of came back a little bit. He didn't do great on the defensive end, but at least you're getting something out of him on the offensive end. Yeah. The thing that getting away from Ladji Dembele a little bit, but the thing that kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit was Price Sanford only played 4 minutes. And in a game when you need somebody to shoot threes, and I'm not sure if he was hampered by an injury or whatever, but 4 minutes doesn't seem like a lot of playing time for him. He should have played more often. And it did help that we had Seydou Traoré back. And, he contributed. His athleticism was great. But I think his coming back is just going to limit minutes for people like, Ladji Dembele and Price Sanford. So, he's going to start taking some of their minutes. Unless they can, supplant him as the next guy in, which I'm not sure they will. or maybe even start, because I know they started Drew Thelwell instead of Traore, which was fine. It worked out. Iowa had a 13-point lead in the first half. I think it was 36-23. I think was the lead at one point. They were only up 7 at the half, so they kind of let down a little bit. And I thought they were playing good defense. I thought they were shooting the ball well. They were tenacious. They were constantly in action, moving, screening, stealing. They stole a lot away from Iowa State, but you could tell they were throwing maximum effort into it at all times. And it was just a situation, I think, like you said earlier, at the end of the game, when you have put as much effort and into the game as you had, it had to come down to, you had to be getting tired. It was just, there's no other way around it. When you don't have the bench that Iowa State has, that they can bring in, several players and have them play, offsetting minutes for the starters, whereas Iowa played most of their starting guys most of the minutes, fatigue does become a factor.
I think it came down to 3 plays. 3 plays during the course of that second half. First one was the out of bounds that was awarded Iowa State when it was off Iowa State, and they could throw it in, get a 3-pointer right away.
Yeah.
Second one was the steal by, I think it was Brock Harding, and then he had it poked out, and that kid, I don't even want to say it was a steal. He kind of tapped it away, maybe, and then that kid got control of it, and then they probably should have had a backcourt violation on that.
Yeah.
And then they hit a 3 again. So there's 6 points right there. And then that one into the shot clock where the kid, I think they were up 78-76 at the time.
Yeah,
and he hits the 30-foot 3-pointer at the end of the shot clock. And I said, well, it's not your day then.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're going to accept Josh Dix's 33-foot 1 second left, you got to accept theirs too. So, I mean, it's just the way the old basketball bounces.
That's the 3 plays I think the game hinged on right there. I mean, that's the 9 points.
No, I agree with you. That half court violation, or that one was, I didn't notice it at the time, but when the announcers mentioned it, I was like, oh, you know what? That's right. That is a backcourt violation, and they didn't call it. And of course, the guy come down and drilled a 3 right then at that point. And
I also thought there was a lot of contact allowed, and it was, but for both teams. Iowa got a lot of benefit of a lot of non-calls on what probably could have ended up being 3-point opportunities, because it seems like everything they threw up wildly was going to go in. But I thought that there was a lot of hand checking and a lot of holding going on, because it seemed like every time Iowa was out on the perimeter, and Iowa State's more athletic. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But it's easy to be more athletic when you're holding on to them and your hands on them the entire time. I mean, that's something they've been trying to get away from for years. And one year they'll make it a point of emphasis. It'll be, you breathe on the guy from 3 feet away and you're going to get called for it. And the next year you can punch him in the face and you're not going to get called for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, not literally, but figuratively. So I thought there was a lot of contact allowed, and it was for both teams. Iowa just doesn't take advantage of it because they're more of a finesse team, and they're not Iowa State's kind of, I don't want to put it this way and make it detract from their effort, but they're more of a brawler. Iowa's more of a finesse team. And the brawler is going to win in a game when they're allowed to do that. I mean, that's kind of what Michigan State's formula for the last, I don't know, however many years Tom Izzo's been there.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from Iowa State. They're number 3 rated, and they're number 3 for a reason. And they played well enough to win on the road, and that was their first true road test. And they did what they had to do late in the game when Iowa didn't, and that's what it comes down to. And that's maybe the difference between being an NCAA basically shoe-in at this point. I don't think, unless they go on a tremendous, horrible roll, they're in. And a team like Iowa that is going to struggle to win enough games to get in. I just don't see the way that the Big Ten, especially now, the way the Big Ten standings are set up. Did you know, and I was going to tell you from last week, I made the mention of the fact that it was going to be really hard to win games on the road. And so I did actually sit down today and I looked at the schedule for the teams that played December home and away games in the Big Ten, and it was 5-31, the visiting team won 5, or how did I say that? They were 31-5 the home team.
Yeah.
So,
won 5 games on the road.
13.8% of the games were awarded to the visiting team as far as wins. So it's difficult, very difficult to win in the Big Ten on the road. And I could go through the teams, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, and I think you put a little bit more perspective on that game against Northwestern as well. Illinois goes to Northwestern and loses. And Illinois just lost a 2-point game to Tennessee.
Yeah, number one team in the nation.
Number one team in the country.
Yeah.
And had them on the ropes. That's, it's not like they were, okay, well, it was just a fluke. And no, that Northwestern game puts a little bit more in perspective of how good Northwestern can be too. And how hard it is to win on the road, no matter how good you are. So I think there's a little bit of hope on the horizon for them because they've showed that they can hang with better teams or higher ranked teams. Now they just got to be able to get over that hump. And I think they will a few times. I think, obviously they're probably going to lose more ranked games than they're going to win. That's just kind of a given, I think. But they're going to beat some people that they shouldn't. And I think they have proven that they are somebody you really have to look at and say, yeah, we can't take them lightly, no matter where you play them.
No, and that kind of effort that they had against Iowa State, if you put that effort again in against, Ohio State, Indiana, Illinois, those are probably going to be wins for you.
I'm not impressed with Ohio State at all.
No, they got destroyed today. But you still have to. Conditioning still is going to be a factor. If you're going to put that much effort in early, 100% effort like you did against Iowa State, you're going to be fatigued at the end, and your legs not going to be there. You're going to come up short on your 3-pointers. You're going to come up short on your free throws. You've got to be able to substitute with players off the bench to give the starters the breaks they need to keep 100% effort going throughout the game and not get fatigued.
Those guys off the bench have to be able to add something to the mix too. They can't just be bodies thrown in there and do nothing.
Correct.
And I'm not saying that's what happened against Iowa State, because I think the bench played fairly well. You had basically you had Traore,
Thelwell. But he started.
Thelwell not Thelwell. Price Sanford and Bailey were the only ones that were non-starters that played.
Yeah, that's
so.
I know shortening the rotation, but you can't shorten it that much.
Yeah, and I wonder if it was just a simple matter of he wasn't 100% sure about Cooper Koch yet.
Well, I'd heard that he's probably not going to be doing a whole lot all year. Just because of a shoulder injury that he's gotten.
Yeah, and I hadn't heard what it was, so.
Yeah, it was a shoulder.
So you put Carter Kingsbury on scholarship for a reason. Throw him out there,
Yeah.
He's a bigger body, 6'4", 6'5" guard.
I think the speed of the game, though, with Iowa State, though, might have been a little bit too much for him. Or, if you even put Riley Mulvey in as a rim defender, I think you're just exposing him to, and one situations just because he's not played enough. And I don't think he's going to be quick enough against Iowa State's quickness. Iowa State had a lot of athleticism and a lot of quickness. And,
that might have been a game. So that might have been a game where Evan Bronze might have been a little bit more of a factor had they used him. I don't know what his status is. I know he's missed a couple of games too, so maybe he wasn't 100% and they just didn't feel good about it. I don't know, but I think he does give you a little bit more of that rim protection, because I think that's kind of his niche is to be a little bit more of a rim protector. So you kind of wonder, if you could have spelled Owen Freeman for 3 or 4 minutes by throwing him in there throughout the course of the game. Maybe that 4 minutes. That's you saw where Owen started to wear out was that last foul when he missed those 2 free throws coming back out of that timeout with about 3.5 minutes to go.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you could just tell that the energy was gone from them. They were drained.
Yep. Yeah. And it's going to get a little easier tomorrow when they're playing New Orleans. I suspect that will be I don't want to take anything away from New Orleans. I'm not sure what they've got, but they're better. Definitely, they should be better than University of South Carolina Upstate. So, I expect Iowa to win tomorrow, and I expect them to win it fairly reasonably handily. Just just
18 to 20 points.
15 to 20 points, and not really be all that close through most of it. I mean, I'm sure it'll be close at the beginning.
Be close for the first 10
yeah.
12 minutes. And then,
and then Iowa should just start pulling away from them little by little. And then on the horizon, you've got the rematch. I think that's Saturday, or is it Friday night? I think it's Saturday. Iowa plays Utah at the Pentagon up in South Dakota, and that is a rematch of the NIT game that they got knocked out of the it was their last game of the season last year. So they'll have an opportunity to revenge that. Whether they will or not, it's beyond me. I don't know what Utah has, but they'll be decent.
Utah's decent, but they haven't really played. From what I saw, they hadn't really played too many people yet. The ones that they had that kind of had a pulse, they lost to.
Yeah.
So,
well, other than that, that's what I got for the men's game. There was only the one this week, and if we were doing this tomorrow night and you were still here, we would probably have two to talk about. But that's okay. We'll talk about New Orleans next week, and probably Utah. But you want to move on to the better game of the week?
Yeah, and I don't want to say the better games in a sense that it was a better game because we won.
Exactly. Yeah, better because it turned out the way we wanted it to, not the way it did. I mean, the other game did.
And honestly, the men's and women's games were kind of mirror images of each other in a reverse effect.
Yeah.
Iowa State led most of that women's game until the last 6 minutes, 8 minutes.
Yeah, 5-6 minutes. Iowa just kind of pulled away.
Slowly pulled away.
Yeah. So Iowa women won 75-69 over Iowa State. Iowa was led by Lucy Olsen, 25 points, and Hannah Stolke had 9 rebounds. Iowa shot 43% from the field, but Iowa State shot 52%. Here's another thing. If you were to look at these field goal percentages and 3-point percentages, you'd think to yourself, and even the rebounds, you'd think to yourself, how did Iowa win this game? So basically, here's the deal. Iowa shot 43% of the field. Iowa State shot 52% from the field. Iowa shot 32% from 3-point line. Iowa State shot 47% from the 3-point line. Iowa was out rebounded for 34-30, but Iowa won the game, and here's why.
Same reason why they lost the game to Tennessee.
Rebounds and turnovers. Or not rebounds. Free throws. Iowa shot 60% free throws, but Iowa State shot 38% free throw shooting. Horrible free throw shooting. Turnovers. Iowa State had 20. Iowa had 8. There's your difference in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And really, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty of the thing, I thought the turning point in the game, and people are probably not, I don't think anybody's going to, maybe they'll argue with me, but I'm not sure that after I present the reasoning. I think when Jan Jensen decided to pull Addie O'Grady and move Hannah Stolke to the 5 to where she was guarding Audie Crooks, and then moved Sydney Falter to the 4. Then with Hannah Stolke being a 5 last year, most of the year, she had gone up against the bigs of all across the nation. I mean, we're talking people from UConn, from Tennessee, or not Tennessee last year, but South Carolina. She had experience. Well, when she moved down to face Audie Crooks, she had her in positions that where when they were trying to inlet the ball to her under the basket, Hannah was knocking it away out of bounds. And it was frustrating Iowa State because they couldn't get the ball to her like they had been all game. I mean, Audie had 31 points. So I think that when you put a more athletic person on Audie, I think that bothered her. I think it bothered the team. And I think that was the turning point, because if you watch that, that's all Iowa State wanted to do all game, was to throw the ball down low to Audie. I think that's what their whole game plan was to do. And it showed 31 points. I think, I don't know how many rebounds, but it was a double-double, I'm sure. She was like their number one opportunity. Throw it to her. If you're unsure of anything else, throw it to her. Now, they did hit some 3-pointers, and they were shooting them pretty well early on.
Well for the game at 47%.
47% is pretty good. Yeah, really good, in fact. But yeah, they just kept turning the ball over, and that was an issue. I know, wasn't Emily Ryan? I think she had like 9 turnovers herself. Yeah. And that's a senior that normally doesn't do that. So you have to give Iowa credit for the defense that they played. And Jan making that decision to move Hannah down to the 5 was, I think it was a game changer, to be honest. I think that was what changed the game.
I'll tell you another thing that really I was impressed with was the ability of Ava Hayden on her as well.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not taking anything away from Addie O'Grady because she has her moments. That's not her game, is to be more of that defender. And I think that's where Ava Hayden can really make her bread and butter this year if she really wants to. When she's in there, that's what you're there for, is your presence in the post. You're going to body them out. You're going to play the defense on them and keep their post people from scoring. And it's going to be needed. And she did a heck of a job on her. And
oh yeah,
the freshman, Leah Guyton is an assassin.
Yeah,
flat out an assassin.
Yeah, I was going to mention her too.
She's quickly becoming one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think the future is definitely bright for them.
Absolutely. I thought Sydney Falter had her best game of the season by far. In fact, she had her season high for points. Plus, she was 3 of 6 from the 3-point line when Iowa only shot 32%. So she was at 50%. 16 points season high. That's good for her. That's when we needed it too. I mean, Iowa State's a pretty good team. They were rated in the top 10 to begin the season, and they've had a couple of losses, one to Northern Iowa and one to South Carolina, and they weren't even in that game at all. But
they weren't, yeah.
But when you talk about the dagger, that I was going to bring up Leah Guyton, that 3-point shot she had pretty late. And it was kind of like one of those deals where, do you shoot it? Do you not shoot it? And she shot it and just drained it. She was 2 of 2 from 3 the other night. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know what her percentage is. And I know she doesn't shoot a lot of them, but it has to be up in 80% range. I mean, she's got to be like 6 of 7 or 6 of 8, something like that. I mean, she's just really good all this season. But Iowa starts conference season tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. and they are at Michigan State. Now, I don't know how to take this because Michigan State took them to the wire in Iowa City last year. In fact, if you remember correctly, Caitlin Clark hit that shot that they had to go back and look at it 3 or 4 times to make sure she actually got it out of her hands and hit that 3-pointer to win it. And I know it was tied at the time, so there was a chance Iowa would have gone to overtime if she had not hit it. But she did and sent Iowa to the win. So, Michigan State is capable of playing Iowa tough. And I don't know what they have coming back, what they lost last year, but I'm going to assume that they're going to be good. And I'm going to assume that Iowa's going to have their hands full with Michigan State. It's going to be a close game.
The ESPN FPI predictor or whatever gives Michigan State an 82% win percent chance.
So there you go.
Game.
I mean,
it's a lot of that has to do with the fact they're playing Ennis Lansing.
Yeah.
But and by the way, Leah Guyton is shooting 80% from 3-point range.
There you go. And I didn't even look that up. I just kind of figured what I'd remembered for. But getting back to Michigan State, that doesn't surprise me. But Iowa's gone on the road and won games this year.
Mm-hmm.
Drake comes to mind, and Drake took Iowa State right to the wire at the end at Ames. So I don't think Iowa's going to be intimidated by going on the road.
Mm-mm.
I don't think the freshmen even know what intimidation are. The definition of the word intimidation. They don't seem to be bothered by anything. I mean, they've played Tennessee, they've played Virginia Tech, they've played Drake, they've played Iowa State, they've got Northern Iowa on the schedule coming up. That's going to be a decent game. They're going to play Maya McDermott's one of the top 2 or 3 point people in all of basketball, women's basketball. So they've got some very interesting games coming up, and they've got some things that you're going to need to be watched. It's going to be edge of your seat type stuff with Iowa going forward here.
Yeah, I think the 82% win chance for Michigan State's rather high. I mean, that would be. Agree. I would have probably maybe, if I was going to give Michigan State an advantage, I'd maybe say it's 55-45.
60-40 maybe.
When you're saying an 82 to 18%, that's basically saying that you don't think Iowa's very good at all. I mean, that's usually the percentages you assign to a team that's 4-4, 5-4, going up against a 9-1 team or something like that. I mean, Michigan State is 9-0, but Iowa's 9-1 and has been tested.
Yeah.
What I don't know what Michigan State's schedule has been like, who they've played. DePaul, Vanderbilt, Cal, Detroit Mercy, and Western Michigan are their last 5. And Vanderbilt was an 8-point win. Cal was a 6-point win. They blew out Detroit Mercy and Western Michigan, and they took it pretty hard to DePaul too. So I don't know. I think that's pretty generous, 82 to 18%. That's pretty generous prediction range in my book. But we'll see.
Well, yeah, the game is an 11 o'clock start, so everybody will have to get up out of bed and get to church and get home for that one. Looking forward to good things. I'm excited about Aaliyah Guyton playing more and more and more, and the freshmen getting their chance to play in the Big Ten and proving their worth. And the future, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, the future is bright with the Iowa women's basketball program. I think it's in an upward ascent, and I'm looking forward to things in the future.
I would agree.
Okay, we had a pretty big week of football too. We had a transfer portal, little bit of news.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to break that, or do you want me to break it?
Well, I don't know if breaking is the right word, but most people have already heard Hank Brown from Auburn has transferred to Iowa and will start classes in January, so he'll be here for the spring. He's kind of an intriguing guy. My first reaction when I first saw that was, that doesn't really move the needle much in my book. Considering the guys that were out there, that had been linked to Iowa, and I don't know if they really were linked to Iowa. I think it was just people thinking, well, Iowa needs a quarterback, so this makes logical sense to put these guys on, like Miller Moss and Connor Wigman, both of who have now have committed. Wigman to Houston and Miller Moss committed to Louisville today.
Okay,
so
didn't hear that.
But you also had the kid from Liberty, who's the true dual threat quarterback, but he's a one and done as well. So I don't think that's what Iowa is really looking for, is the one and done stuff. They want somebody that they can bring in for at least a year, probably 2 years. That way, if they don't win the starting job coming in, they have a better shot at winning it the second year, maybe. I don't know. But then I started looking at film of Hank Brown, watched some of his high school stuff, and I've watched his highlights from Auburn. And my assessment is he's the kind of guy, and he's young, so he's just a redshirt freshman.
Mm-hmm.
I think the spotlight was a little bit too much for him in that art game against Arkansas that he got pulled in first half. But let's also remember one thing here. He threw 3 picks against Arkansas. We had a quarterback that threw 5 picks in a game, and we thought he was a great quarterback, by the name of Rick Stanzi, who threw 5 picks against Indiana in 2009. Yes, we still won that game, but he did throw 5 picks, and we also had an issue with him throwing a pick 6 to start games. So I started looking through that, and I'm like, okay, so what happened here? I think the kid is so used to that first read being available that he wasn't going through his progressions. So he was locking in, and it was, and so then I kind of noticed that other times through his career, it was, if that first one wasn't available, he did kind of tend to dump it off a little bit more. But then that first start that he had against New Mexico or New Mexico State or whoever it was,
New Mexico,
I saw what appeared to be like situations where he starts out right, but then he comes back to the left. So he was going through his progressions. He had a little bit more time. The game maybe slowed down just a little bit for him. And again, that was the game prior to the Arkansas game, which was not a good game for him. And, but I think it says a lot when Peyton Thorne was a Big Ten quarterback, a starting Big Ten quarterback, and he beat him out. And then he lost his job back to him. But the fact that he was able to beat him out tells you that he's got some talent. And I saw he's got, his deep pass has got great touch on it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. And I think, the thing that I would say is this is the guy that Tim Lester wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And if he has faith in him and he thinks he can do something with him, I'm all for it.
I mentioned something to somebody on online. They were mentioning Tim Lester and his hire. It was, his guy getting his guy that he wanted, and Hank Brown. And I And I kind of made mention of the fact that, this might be the true test to see whether or not Tim Lester is a quarterback guru that can develop a kid who, had started somewhere else. And he just said, this is my guy. I'm going to take him under my wing and I'm going to get him through my system and we're going to work with him. And he's going to be probably the guy, not maybe next year, but the year after. And that's kind of the way I'm reading it. And this is going to tell us a little bit about how Tim Lester, his ability to take guys like that and progress through their development and turn them into something, because we haven't had that. And, we've talked about this to the point of ad nauseum almost, but Iowa has not in the last 5 years really developed anybody. Everybody that comes in, they don't develop. It seems like, we talked about this, they've gotten worse. They've gotten, their first game is they show up and they're not bad. And then it just continues to just progress in a negative fashion. Well, this is Tim's opportunity from scratch to bring this kid up and develop him the way he wants to. And we want to see what Tim can do with a quarterback from scratch, essentially. We talk about, we'll talk about here in a little bit. We'll talk about the new high school kids that are signed in the class. Some of the quarterbacks that are going to be coming up, showing up in either the spring or the fall, depending on their eligibility or their high school. But, this is his opportunity to fail or pass with a quarterback in development. I'm thinking at this point, you're looking at Brendan Sullivan probably as your number one guy, probably, if he doesn't get hurt. Obviously, he's going to be number one at the bowl game. We've already established that. But I think he's going to be number one going into next season with his final season. I think you're just going to anoint him. The fact that he's been in the system for a year, he will now have a chance to go through spring again, which he didn't get the first time. He'll have a chance to go through spring. He'll have a chance to go through an entire year of tutelage under Tim Lester, along with Hank Brown. They'll all be in the same room together, learning all at the same time. But I just think that Brandon has a little bit of a leg up.
He's got the
from an eligibility standpoint and from an experience standpoint.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that somebody, I think we talked about it before, where we wanted to see Brendan Sullivan challenge Cade McNamara and bring out the best in him. And maybe hopefully this is the situation where Hank Brown brings out the best in Brendan Sullivan too, and provides that competition. And honestly, at this point, whoever the better quarterback is wins. It doesn't really matter to me, as long as they can go out there and be effective. And you've proven that you need more than one quarterback. Most places are going to need more than one quarterback. We went through 3?
And I think you're also looking at a style difference between the two also, because I think you're looking at Hank Brown more of a stand back, more of a in the pocket type. He's not going to run. He's not going to take off where Brendan Sullivan's going to take off and run if he doesn't see what he likes down the field. And that's going to provide a different kind of dynamic to the offense. So, you've got two different styles, and then you've got, we'll talk about this. Why don't we just jump in?
Well, one thing I do want to say is from what I noticed, the kid is not a statue in the pocket either. He's got some mobility to him. He's not going to be one of those just drop back and not be able to evade pressure. So he can do that, and he can run that RPO effectively because he does have the ability to run a little bit. He's not like Brendan. That is his main strength, is his running ability.
Right. Yeah. I've seen some tape on him where he runs off to the side in a kind of a waggle type of situation, and he threw across his body and hit a kid in the end zone on a tremendous pass. It's something I hadn't seen out of Iowa forever. It was just an absolute dart that the kid pulled down in stride, and it was so beautiful to watch. And we hadn't seen that in a while, and it would be nice to see that again. But yeah, I don't think Iowa's done in the portal. Obviously, they're looking at other positions too. So I wouldn't expect this to be over and one and done type of thing. And they may even look at another quarterback too. I think there's a lot of people talking about a second quarterback out of the portal. I don't know. We'll see what's available and if they gauge the interest, and hopefully there'll be somebody that if they want to go for another quarterback, then that's what they can do. If they want to settle with what they have, I shouldn't use settle. I mean, just take what they've got
You want
and
to run
run
with
with
what
it.
they've got.
Yeah. And that's fine too. I'm not going to try to sit back and try to get in the heads of the recruiting coordinator and the offensive and defensive coordinators and know what they need and what they're looking for. I'm not even going to try to do that because I wouldn't know the first thing. So, just, I guess, trust in that they know what they're looking for and what they need. And hopefully we have some news next week that we can, expand on another transfer in and not transfers out.
Yeah, the transfers out, I'm not been too concerned with. The only one that I saw that went out was Chase Brackney, that I was I kind of would like to have seen how that kid would have turned out, because I think he had a high upside, but I don't think he was going to see the field anytime soon. So, it's probably a situation where he's like, well, I'm going to go somewhere where I can play. But from an outgoing standpoint, I don't think we're losing a ton. A lot of walk-ons, because you've got to cut the roster down anyway. Those guys probably had that conversation of, you can stick it out, but if, we come down to fall camp and I've got to make a decision, unless you really stand out and you've really done something that makes you head and shoulders above somebody else, it's probably going to be it. So here's your opportunity. If you want to try to go someplace else, you want to drop down to a level, you want to do whatever, here's your opportunity. This might be your best chance to take it, because people are still looking, by the fall, people are going to be looking to trim again. So,
yeah, this 105, I haven't really thought about it too much to know the advantages and disadvantages of it at this point. I know it's going to probably not be to Iowa's advantage because they like to hold a lot of kids back for preferred walk-ons. That's going to be kind of an ongoing thing for Iowa going forward. They're just going to have to kind of change their philosophy a little bit with that. But I think they can, and I think they'll just adapt to it like they do everything else. We had some high school signings. You want to go through some of those with me?
Yeah.
I'm going to go by position here and just give you the names of the guys that we signed that signed with Iowa, and there wasn't a large class.
15.
We'll go with quarterback Jimmy Sullivan and Ryan Fitzgerald. Of course, everybody knows Ryan Fitzgerald from his dad. Was the quarterback or the coach at Northwestern. Help me out with his first name. Pat, right. Mental things right now going on. Pat Fitzgerald's son is coming to Iowa. People are in the backgrounds talking about if he's going to get a coaching job at Iowa. I don't know at this point. I don't even think he's interested in that. He just wants to watch his boy play. I think that's what it's come down to. Running back, we picked up one running back. He's a 3-star out of Florida, Nathan McNeil. Tight end, we got two guys, Thomas Meyer, I think he's out of Clear Lake, if I remember correctly, and Eli Johnson. Wide receivers, Terrence Smith, I'm getting a lot of pub about him. I've heard a lot of stuff about him.
Big kid, too, isn't he? I remember right. Isn't he, 6'4", 6'3"?
Yeah.
Big kid.
Yeah, prototypical, good speed, good height. You want to get kids like that. And if he's got hand talent and can catch passes, then he's got nothing but good things in front of him. Mason Woods, of course, that's LeVar Woods' son coming in. Offensive line, you got Lucas Allgaier, 6'6". He's coming in. Not a lot more that was high school related as far as the offensive line goes. Defensive line, Yosei Epinesa, the 5-star, probably the cream of the jewel on the crown, so to speak, of the recruiting class. Yeah. He comes in. Joey Van Wetsinga and Brad Fitzgibbon are coming in on the defensive line. So you got 3 decent guys there. Linebacker Burke Gatcher, he's a 4-star, and Carson Cooney. You got some DBs coming in: Charles Bell, Olante Dean, and Drew McPherson. Those are just some of the guys that come in on defensive backfield. We've got they may be looking at transfer portal guys for that too. I would hope they would, because I think that's an area of not a lot of depth.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the guy that I wanted out of the portal just committed to Oregon today. That Tiedemann out of Purdue.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
But there's also the opportunity that with the Brendan Sullivan connection and the Jacob Gill connection, that you might be able to get the the cornerback from Aaron Johnson from Northwestern. That's in the portal.
Okay.
Who had a pick six against Iowa this year.
And I had also heard that there's a young man who's a safety out of North Dakota, name of Wisniewski.
Yep.
He's also one of those guys that's on the radar for Iowa. At one point, I thought he was almost like a done deal, but I think things have gotten a little bit cloudy with him right now, so we're not sure 100% on what his deal is. But we'll talk about that when it comes around. But right now, Rivals has Iowa's class at 57th, and 24/7 Sports has them at 39th, and On3 has them at 33rd in the nation. So,
That's
right
quite a
in
range.
that, yeah, probably if you look at them in a Big Ten standing, it's probably like 8th, 9th, 10th. Yeah, something in that vicinity. I guess we just need to kind of let things play out and see how these kids progress and who ends up actually showing up and putting the time and the work in and impressing the coaching staff and see who can get on the field early in their career.
Yeah. As they say, players win games, not recruiting rankings.
Well, 100%. That's absolutely. No question about it. I think we should move on from that and we talk about what everybody wants to talk about right now, and that is the college football playoff.
Okay.
We have a game coming up on Friday night. I hope everybody knows that. And it is one that I'm interested in because I really want to see what Indiana's got, and I want to see how they play. They've got Notre Dame at Notre Dame. I'm excited about this game. I'm a little bit nervous for Indiana. I think this is not a great draw for them, especially with it being an in-state school. So they don't have to travel far for their game, obviously. Right. But Notre Dame's a 7.5-point favorite.
Seems a little high.
I would have guessed maybe 4, 3.
I know people would say, well, Indiana's a fake playoff team. I disagree. I think they've earned their way in. So to me, I think 7.5 is a bit high, but I'd like to see Indiana win it. I honestly really would. I don't like Indiana. I'm not a big Indiana fan. I don't like the university and whatnot, and I'm not a Signetti fan. But I would like to see him. And obviously, I would like to see him in it just because it's Notre Dame, and I don't like Notre Dame at all.
Well, that's part of it. But I think most of it for me is just to kind of shut the naysayers up a little bit.
Yeah.
The ones that said, "Oh, Indiana's they're just a product of their schedule. They played no one." Well,
they blew out everybody that was on their schedule too.
Yeah, except Ohio State.
With the exception of Ohio State.
And they had to play them at Ohio State, which is very difficult to play at Ohio State.
Didn't
Only
they play
Michigan
at Michigan.
Michigan was at Ohio State this year.
No. Indiana played Michigan at Michigan, I think, because that might
be right.
So,
and they beat them 20-15, if I remember correctly. If that's the score. So I mean, there you go. They beat Michigan. Michigan was actually ascending at the end of the season. They were getting better and better, and they figured things out. So then we moved Saturday. Saturday's got 3 games. I think one of the games is going to be fantastic. But you got SMU at Penn State at 11 a.m. Penn State's an 8.5-point favorite. Would I like to see Penn State get beat? Yeah. Will they get beat? Probably not. I just think Penn State's a little bit more talented. But you never know. They play the games for a reason. They don't play them on paper. They play them on the field. So then at 3 o'clock, you got Clemson and Texas. And to me, Clemson and Texas is a who cares? I mean, granted, it's still the playoff, but there's no real rooting interest for me one way or the other on this one.
I would probably root for Clemson just because SEC teams.
Yeah. Texas is an 11-point favorite. So, overwhelmingly everybody believes at this point, the bettors all believe Texas is the team in that game. And then the game that I think I'm probably the most excited about, and it's not because I have a rooting interest. I just think it'll be a great game. And I think it's going to be a lot closer than what the prognosticators think. And that's Tennessee at Ohio State, 7 p.m. start. And right now they have Ohio State a 7-point favorite. And I don't think to be honest, I'd almost look at Tennessee to win this game.
I would say if you're going to give a favorite, maybe 3 just for home field advantage.
Otherwise, it's a toss-up.
Yeah, I mean, it will depend on which Tennessee team shows up and which Ohio State team shows up, too.
That's That's true. It is at Ohio State, so I mean, it's going to be cooler than it would be if it was at Tennessee, but I don't know there's going to be that much difference.
There's not a ton of
I mean, maybe
mileage between
7, 8, 10
Columbus and
degrees
Knoxville.
would be the only difference. Yeah. So, you know, we didn't talk about it last week, but there's been so much talk about the playoff and the teams and the seeding and all that stuff. I think they got the right teams. I really do. I think that's fine, especially when you talk about you have to bring in the championship of each conference as a top 4 seed, or the champions of each conference, the top 4 seed, and that's fine. I just think they got the seeding kind of messed up. Let me go through the top 12 as they did it. 1 Oregon, 2 Georgia, 3 Boise State, 4 Arizona State, 5 Texas, 6 Penn State, 7 Notre Dame, 8 Ohio State, 9 Tennessee, 10 Indiana, 11 SMU, and 12 Clemson. Okay, if I was doing it, now this is just me, this is no one else, I go Oregon, same as number 1, Georgia, same as 2, but I would put Arizona State ahead of Boise State. And I'm only putting them then there because of the championships, the conference championships winners. I think Arizona State's better than Boise State. I think they played a harder schedule. I think the Big 12 is better than the Mountain West. So in my book, Arizona State goes 3, Boise goes 4. Then you got Texas at 5. I think Ohio State's better than Penn State. So I put Ohio State at 6, where they had Penn State at 6. I put Penn State at 7. I put Tennessee at 8. So move them up 1. I put Notre Dame at 9. I put Indiana the same at 10. And then I switched Clemson and SMU because Clemson beat SMU in the championship game. So I put Clemson at 11 and put SMU at 12. Now, I didn't go in and say, okay, well, if this is the case in my seeds, then these are the games you'd see. But I'm going to tell you right now, Penn State doesn't get SMU and then turn around and play Boise State if they win.
Yeah.
To me, that is the easy schedule. And the one that I think was tough was, you know, Tennessee, Ohio State. Then you play, who is it? Oregon. Then you play Oregon. Yes. Yeah. So the winner of the Tennessee, the way they've got it now, the winner of the Tennessee Ohio State game plays Oregon. Wow. That is not an easy schedule. You would think that they would have brought in, like, you know, Clemson or SMU, or at this point, even Boise State, to have them be the ability to take on the number 1 team if they would win.
And I think
I don't know. It just seemed kind of messed up to me.
I think it's been brought up by a lot of people. You play the first rounds. You take your 4 byes, okay, and you seed them 1 through 4, however you want to do that. You take your final 8 teams. They play each other. Once those games are over, then you reseed those final 8 teams. The lower seed plays, you know, like if, let's say, Clemson beats Texas, okay? Clemson's the lowest seed on the board. Clemson now has to play Oregon. You know, so it gives incentive for the team to be the number 1 seed.
Yep.
And it gives you incentive to not be the last seed.
Right.
So I just think, you know, like you said, when you've got a situation, and I'm not saying that Penn State's going to roll through SMU and Boise. I think they're going to have trouble with one or the other or both. But that is definitely giving a 7 seed, 7, right? Penn State's 7 seed?
Yeah, 6.
6 seed. That's giving a 6 seed a very, very favorable run to a championship. You're better off losing your championship game and getting into that 5, 6 seed area than you are to be a 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I know that's been talked about by a lot of people and how that should be. And I think isn't that basically how the FCS does it?
Where they reseed after the.
I thought so.
Well, maybe. Here's another way you could think about it too. I like the way you talked about that, reseeding them after the first the buys are done, or the first weekend. Here's another thing you could do. Instead of giving preference to the conference champions, you take the 12 teams. Okay, so the conference champions, you take the same 12 teams that we already got, and instead of saying, you know, the conference champions get 1, 2, 3, and 4, nope. You take all 12 teams, and here's a thought. To make it as as unbiased as you possibly can. You select 100 people, not necessarily fans, but you take 100 people who are in the business. Let's say it's ADs, some ADs across the nation, and just randomly at the beginning of the season, you pick 25 ADs. You pick 25 sports writers from all over the United States randomly. You take 25 just random people and you pick them and say, okay, you watch the games, do this. Okay, and so then what you do is after you get like 100 or 101, whatever it ends up being, so you want to have an odd number so you don't have ties. Then you send out, okay, here's the 12 teams to everybody I just mentioned. Put them 1 through 12. And then what you do is as you get those back, you can do it electronically. As you get those back, you go, okay, everybody that got a number 1, Oregon probably got number 1 on majority of these if we were doing it. Every number 1 gets 1 point. Every number 2, 2 points, 3, 4, all the way down the line. So if you're number 12, then you get 12 points. And at the end of the whole thing, you take backwards. The lower number gets the higher seed or the number 1 seed. That way you have a much larger demographic of people who have the opportunity instead of just putting 5 or 6 people in a room and saying, okay, here's your 12 teams. You've got 4 here that you have to put 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the rest of them you can throw in. Do it that way. That way, you've got people from the East Coast, West Coast, North, South, everywhere in between of all different fandoms and associations, and let them decide how this whole thing sets up. Just a thought. It was just something I come up with the other night. It doesn't have to be like that. And I know there's probably holes in that situation that I haven't thought about, but I think that would be as fair as you could get it.
Yeah, the other thing that you could probably do is, and I know that expansion is already on people's minds because certain teams in the SEC got left out and they're wanting to expand because of that. But I don't see an issue with expanding it to 16 and just letting everybody play. Nobody gets a bye.
Right.
Then you can take you set it up in a true NCAA, like a basketball bracket, 1 through 16, and it always figures out where you're never getting a situation unless you've got a huge upset. It's a fair situation. Yeah. One plays 16, 2 plays 15, so forth and so on. If everything plays out with the favorites winning, you should have 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5 in the next round. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to give that advantage to some people, some teams, like it is now, where you've got an automatic bye, and then basically you're not even seeding the top 4. You almost have to throw those out and say you're seeding the bottom 8. And that is how it gets filtered in. It's not a good situation. It's not a good scenario for them to be doing it that way because, like you said, you've got a team that might be a higher ranked team that it's to play Oregon. Oregon has to play the highest ranked team left on the board or something. One of the higher ranked teams on the board. It's not a good situation. And I know a lot of people have complained about it. A lot of sports writers have complained about it, broadcasters, whatever. And they're right. I agree with you 100%. They got the right teams. They got them seeded wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's really too much of an argument for people. I think that everybody pretty much thinks the same thing, but it's fine. We'll play it out this year just like we were going to always anyway. But I want to bring up something, and we have not talked about this, but it was something that just popped into my head. I'm going to get your thoughts on what are your thoughts on Marshall just opting out, completely out of a bowl game? 25 kids have entered the transfer portal, and they just said, we don't have a team, we can't come. So they got Louisiana Tech to play Army now in the Independence Bowl. This whole okay, here's my scenario. You take that transfer portal and you wrap it up in a bow and you tighten it down and you don't let it even open up until after the last game of the season. And then you open it up for 2 months. Leave it open. Mm-hmm. Kids want to come in, they come in. That way, the only opt-outs would be kids that want to go to the pros. And there will be a far smaller number than the kids that are transferring. Because the transferring kids, they don't want to play because they're transferring. They don't want to hurt themselves and not be able to get to their next team for the next year. So you wrap up that transfer portal real tight and you say, okay, January, whatever the end of the last game is, we'll open it up and we'll open it up for 2 months. Boom. Everybody has opportunity. Go in, get crazy. And that way it'll stop things like this.
Yeah. I would agree. I don't have any problem with that. I think that's a fair scenario because, yeah, you're right. You look at a guy like, the exception of it is like a guy like a Devin Brown. Well, I'm going to go in the transfer portal, but I'm going to stay with the team and play for them if they need me until they're out of the playoffs. Well, again, that's a different situation because he's in the playoffs. If he was in a regular other bowl game, would he be still doing the same thing? I don't know. But, I think that is a coward's way out by saying, well, we just don't have a team. You still got 70 guys on that team. You probably have walk-ons. Just throw a freaking team out there. You earned those other kids because you had 25 kids that entered the portal. You're punishing the other 80 kids that are still on your roster.
Well, I think part of it too is because the coach left.
The head coach left. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that allows some exceptions to every rule. But still, by the same token, hey, bring the associate head coach or bring the defensive coordinator and let him coach a game.
How many of these
roll
guys,
with what you have?
How many of these guys bring interim head coaches because coaches have taken other jobs before the bowl game?
Yeah, that's happened.
Yeah, why can't you do it there? I mean, and why are you tailing these other 75, 80 kids that are on your roster when you start throwing in walk-ons and whatnot? Here, you're not important enough because these 25 people decided to opt out. You're not important enough to go to this game.
Right. Well,
That's not fair to them.
I just think the solution is to end the transfer portal in December and move it to January, late January or early February, and then just leave it open instead of a 2-week period. Leave it open for 2 months. Just let it go.
I think the issue there is because a lot of teams start their spring practice in February and they're trying to bring these guys in to get them in spring practice, blah, 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 whatever.
Well, why don't we standardize things, though?
Yeah.
Say you can't start your spring practice before
March 1st.
Yeah.
You've got from January 9th to March 1st to get guys on campus and get them signed up and get them in there if you want to participate in your spring practice. I mean, Iowa doesn't start until what, mid-March?
Yeah, and then their game's usually third week of April?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why the rest of the college football world couldn't adopt that whole scenario.
Well, some teams and some conferences think they're special. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, there needs to be more standardization, maybe across the board. There
needs to be a lot of governance in NCAA athletics at this point that are not there.
I know some of you watch me take a drink of this. I'm going to tell you what it is. It's not what you think it is. It's just good old iced tea. I'm just drinking iced tea, guys. There's no vodka in it. There's nothing like that. It's just iced tea. I've been struggling with a little bit of a cold the last couple weeks, and I'm finally over it, kind of. And I still get grovelly in my throat a little bit, so I have to have something to kind of lubricate so I can talk. But I don't know. I don't think we're ever going to solve the world's problems, the two of us. But I think, if you could move that transfer portal, if nothing else, maybe open it up right at maybe the week of the championship game. If you need to go earlier than that, that way it only affects 2 teams and they know what they're doing. That way, all of the other bowl games, you don't have this problem with Marshall. I'm sure there's holes in that too, and I haven't thought of everything, but
the kids that would opt out on a championship game are kids that are not ever going to play anyway.
Zero.
If you've got an opportunity to play in a championship game, even though you think you want to transfer, you're not going to go into that transfer portal until after that game anyway. Yeah. So that would be fair.
So. But I don't know. Other than that, merchandise, guys, pick up the merch. There's only a couple weeks left. Maybe not even that. There's 10 days left before Christmas.
10 days left. Yeah.
Get in there and get that. It's 10% off. And you're never going to buy it cheaper than you are right now. That I know of, unless we decide to go crazy.
Yeah, I don't look for that to happen too much. My order will be here. Was supposed to be here today, but I think the ice kind of kept it away, so it should be here Monday. But looking forward to getting my stuff in. Yeah,
You have a question?
Yeah,
we should probably get wrapping up. It's been, we're at what, an hour and 4 minutes right now, and we haven't even put the intro and outro in yet.
So
you have a
question of the week?
Question of the week. Yep.
So this is Kirk Ferentz's 26th season at Iowa. In those 26 seasons, how many times in those 26 seasons did Iowa not make a bowl game? And I'm taking out the COVID year because they actually made a bowl game, but
just didn't play it.
Didn't get a play in it because Missouri opted out.
Mm-hmm.
So the number of times that Iowa did not qualify or get invited to a bowl game, let's not say qualify, let's say not invited to a bowl game in those 26 years. Yes.
There's a hint. How many times has
Iowa
not been invited to a bowl game?
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
Western Michigan will haunt you for the rest of your life.
Yep. We'll have fun tomorrow night. I think that, I'm just jealous. I'd love to be there. I'd love to ask questions. I'd love to hear all the answers, and I'm excited for you. And I'm going to quiz you, of course, when I talk to you the next time, how it went and if there's anything that you didn't know. And I'm sure there's going to be things you didn't know, but let me in on all the secrets and things that are behind the scenes that I didn't know about.
Absolutely.
I'm excited for you.
So yeah, let's go ahead and let's wrap things up, and let's like the videos if you like the content. Make sure you subscribe. Check us out on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I do have stuff on Blue Sky now, Twitter, TikTok. We're expanding to every medium that I can possibly think of to get us on, and we started a little bit of a trend on TikTok at points where a couple of our videos have gone over the 45,000 view, so that's a good thing. But yeah, make sure you're leaving comments for us. Let us know what you like and don't like. Check out the merch store. You'll see the QR code will pop up have been popping up throughout this video. Yeah, again, thanks for support, and we appreciate you listening to us, and we'll continue to keep putting this out, and we hope that you like what you're hearing, and at least, if nothing else, it gives you a little bit of entertainment for the day. So with that said, let's finish it off with a Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.